You should probably go to your family's place this year. That was how my wife, Allison, told me she was spending Christmas with her ex. Not asking. Not apologizing. Just standing in our kitchen 2 weeks before Christmas, holding her phone against her chest like it had already given her permission. I had just come home from a 12-hour paramedic shift. My boots were wet from the snow. My shirt still smelled like diesel, cold air, and the hand sanitizer we used until our skin cracked. I had not even taken my jacket off yet. I thought she was going to tell me something about her mother, or the house, or maybe the credit card bill we had been trying to knock down. Instead, she said, Eric's family invited me for Christmas. I looked at her. Eric, I said. As in your ex, Eric? She made this small face, like I had already started being difficult. Yes, but it's not like that. Eric was not just some old boyfriend. Eric was the man who had left Allison 3 weeks before their wedding. He left her for another woman, then acted like everyone else was dramatic for being upset. When I met Allison 2 years after that, she still flinched at certain songs. She still avoided one side of town, because Eric's parents lived there. She still cried the first Christmas we spent together, because she said she never thought she would feel normal again. I was the one who sat with her through all that. I was the one who met her parents and promised them I was not going to treat their daughter like a temporary thing. I was the one who stayed. So when she said Eric's family wanted her there, like old times, I waited for the part where she explained why this was insane. It never came. She said his mom always loved me, his sister has a baby now, and she said she wants me to meet him. It's just Christmas Eve and Christmas morning. I asked, and me? Allison looked down at the counter. Well, I think it might be awkward if you came. The house went quiet, except for the heater kicking on. Then she added, honestly, it might be easier if you just went to your family's place this year. I stared at her for a few seconds. In my job, you learn not to react too fast. People scream. People bleed. People lie because they are scared. If you panic with them, you become useless. So I did what I always did. I got still. Allison took my silence as permission. She rushed to explain that she and Eric had been talking again as friends, that it was healthy, that closure did not have to be ugly, that I knew how important his family had once been to her. I asked one question. When did he reach out? She blinked. A few weeks ago. I kept looking at her. She sighed. Late October. But it was harmless. Late October. It was December 11th. For almost 2 months, my wife had been talking to the man who broke her heart, and I was finding out only because his family wanted her at Christmas. I nodded once. Then I said, have fun. Her shoulders dropped with relief. That was the first thing that really hurt. Not the trip. Not even Eric. The relief. She thought I was going to swallow it. She thought I was going to be sad, maybe a little jealous, maybe quiet for a few days, and then I would still be there when she came home. She smiled a little and said, thank you for being mature about this. I walked past her and went upstairs. That night, I found the card. It was tucked under a pile of mail on the counter, behind a grocery flyer and one of Allison's floral supply catalogs. Cream envelope. Green ink. Her name written in neat cursive. I should not have opened it. But it was already unsealed. The card had a snowman on the front. Inside, Eric's mother had written, we are so excited to have you back where you belong this Christmas. Back where you belong. I read that line 3 times. Then I put the card back exactly where I found it. When Allison came upstairs, she acted soft. Too soft. She asked if I wanted tea. She touched my shoulder. She said she knew the situation was unusual, but she hoped I trusted her. I asked, were you ever going to tell me before they invited you? She froze. That was my answer. Allison. She crossed her arms. I didn't tell you because I knew you'd make it a thing. You made it a thing when you hid it." Her face tightened. "You don't understand. Eric's family was almost my family." I almost laughed. Not because it was funny. Because for 3 years, I had gone to her parents' house every Sunday I could. I had fixed her dad's porch railing. I had driven her mom to a follow-up appointment when Allison had work. I had cooked breakfast there on the 4th of July because her dad burned the bacon every year and everyone knew it. I had become family the slow way. Without history. Without drama. Without needing to be chased. But I did not say any of that. I just said, okay. She hated that. Allison wanted a fight because a fight would let her call me insecure, or a fight would let her make this about my tone instead of her choice. I gave her nothing. The next morning, I sat in my truck outside the station after my shift and opened my banking app. Not because I wanted to punish her, because a scene can become unsafe long before anyone admits it. I started looking at what I had been carrying. There was the credit card from Allison's reset year before we got married. She told me she had it under control. Somehow, I had been paying most of it. There was the personal loan she said was almost gone. It was not almost gone. There were monthly charges for floral classes, wreath supplies, craft booth fees, storage for holiday decor, a website subscription for a small business she kept saying was about to take off. I had not minded helping. That was the ugly part. I liked being useful. I liked making her life easier. I liked seeing her happy when a box of ribbon or dried flowers showed up at the door. But now, looking at the payments, I realized I had not been helping a partner build something. I had been funding someone who felt free to replace me at Christmas. So I made changes. Nothing illegal. Nothing hidden. Nothing cruel. I covered my half of the household bills through the end of the month. I removed my card from her supply accounts. I stopped the extra payments I had been making toward debts that were not in my name. I rerouted my paycheck into my personal account. Then I printed everything. Statements, receipts, payment histories. When you are a paramedic, you document everything. Times, symptoms, medications, witnesses. You learn that facts matter most when emotions are loud. I was done being loud. That afternoon, Allison texted me a picture of a red dress laid across our bed. "Too much for Christmas at Eric's parents' house?" she wrote. I sat in the ambulance bay and stared at it. One of the guys, Tony, walked past with a gas station coffee and said, "You good?" I locked my phone. Not really. He did not push. That was one thing I loved about the job. People there knew the difference between privacy and silence. 3 nights later, I went to Allison's parents' house. Her dad, Tom, opened the door in a sweatshirt with flour on one sleeve. Her mom, Marcy, was in the kitchen making soup. I brought a pie from the bakery near my station because Marcy liked the apple crumble one. That was normal. That was what made it hurt. Marcy hugged me and said, "We'll see you Christmas morning, right?" I looked at her. That one question told me Allison had not told them the truth. I said, "Probably not." Tom noticed first. He had this way of going quiet when something was wrong. He set down the bowls and asked, "What happened?" I did not give them a performance. I did not call Allison names. I said, "Allison is spending Christmas with Eric's family. She told me I should go to my own family's place this year." Marcy's face changed like I had slapped her. "Eric?" she whispered. "That Eric?" I nodded. Tom said, "No, there's no way." I told them what I knew. That Allison and Eric had been talking since October. That she did not tell me until 2 weeks before Christmas. That I had not been invited. That she had already made plans to go alone. Marcy sat down slowly. Tom's jaw worked like he was chewing on words he could not say. Then Marcy said, "She told me you volunteered to work Christmas." There it was. Not just hidden. Managed. I leaned back in my chair and breathed through my nose. "She said that?" I asked. Tom looked ashamed, and he had not even done anything. She said you might be picking up shifts, he said, and that she might stop by an old family friend's gathering. I almost smiled. Old family friend. That was how she had wrapped it. I stood up. Marcy grabbed my hand. Adam, she said, are you asking us to do something? No, I said. I just didn't want you hearing a different version later. That made it worse for them. If I had yelled, they could have comforted me. If I had demanded they choose, they could have pushed back. But I only gave them facts. At the door, Marcy hugged me so hard I could barely breathe. Then she whispered, "You were the one who stayed." I made it to my truck before my eyes burned. I did not cry. But I sat there for a while with both hands on the steering wheel, staring at the Christmas lights on their porch, trying to understand how my own marriage had made me feel like a guest. Over the next week, Allison got lighter. That was the clearest sign that she had no idea what she had done. She hummed while packing small things. She mentioned Eric's sister's baby twice. She bought a bottle of wine for his parents. She asked me if I thought bringing a gift was too much. I said, do what you think is right. She hated that answer too. On December 20th, I asked, will Eric's girlfriend be there? Allison's hand stopped over a roll of wrapping paper. I don't know. You didn't ask? No. But her face told me something else. She did not want to know. Because if Eric had someone serious, this stopped being a warm return to old memories and became exactly what it was, a married woman dressing up to visit her ex on Christmas. That same day, I met with a divorce attorney. I did not tell Allison. I know how that sounds. But she had already made a private world inside our marriage. I was only making my exit from it. The attorney was calm. She told me not to empty accounts, not to touch Allison's belongings, and not to create drama. I told her I had no interest in drama. I found a short-term rental 10 minutes from my station. Small place, 1 bedroom, bad kitchen, clean floors. That was enough. I booked movers for Christmas Eve morning. Then I called my mother and told her I would not make Christmas dinner. She went quiet and said, "Do I need to come get you?" "No," I said. "Are you safe?" That question almost cracked me, because I ask people that all the time at work. I looked around my own living room. At the garland Allison had hung. At the stockings on the mantel. At the red dress bag hanging on the closet door. "I'm safe," I said. "I just need to leave." Christmas Eve morning, Allison acted like she was leaving for a normal trip. She came downstairs with her hair done and that red dress packed in a green overnight bag. I had just gotten home from a night shift. My eyes felt full of sand. I was wearing a hoodie and holding coffee I had not touched. She looked at me and smiled carefully. "I really think this will be good for everyone," she said. I looked at her bag. Everyone? You know what I mean. I carried the bag to her car because some old part of me still knew how to be decent even when I was done. Snow was falling in thin, hard flakes. Her car was warming in the driveway. Christmas music played faintly through the closed door. Before she got in, she touched my arm. "Please don't sit around making yourself miserable." I looked at her hand on my sleeve. Then at her face. "I won't." She smiled like I had finally understood. Then she drove away. I stood there until her car turned the corner. Then I went inside and started packing. It was strange how quiet leaving was. Movies make it look loud, drawers flying open, glass breaking, people throwing clothes into bags like anger gives them strength. Real leaving felt more like cleaning a wound. Slow, careful, painful because every touch reminded you it was real. I took my clothes, my work gear, my boots by the door, my tools from the garage, my grandfather's watch from the dresser, my old paramedic textbooks from the shelf. I took the framed photo of me with Allison's parents from our first Christmas together. I left the furniture. I left the gifts under the tree. I left anything that could turn into a fight. The movers were two guys Tony knew. They did their work fast and quiet. One of them saw me staring at my empty side of the closet. "You good, man?" I swallowed. "Not today." He nodded and carried another box downstairs. Before I left, I wrote the note. Not a speech, not a poem, just the truth. Allison, I'm not going to compete with the past you invited back into our marriage. I covered my part of the house bills through the end of the month. I removed only what was mine. The rest can go through attorneys. I hope Christmas gave you the clarity you were looking for. Adam. I set it on the dresser. Then I turned off the bedroom light. For a second, I looked at the empty space where her red dress had been. And I felt something I did not expect. Not jealousy. Relief. At Eric's parents' house, Allison got the Christmas she thought she wanted for about 20 minutes. I learned most of this later from Marcy, and some from Allison's own messages. The wreath was still on the same red front door. Eric's mother hugged her too long. His father called her kiddo. His sister showed off the baby. The house smelled like cinnamon rolls and pine candles. For a little while, Allison got to pretend time had bent backward for her. Then Paige walked in. Eric introduced her as his fiancée. Not girlfriend. Fiancée. Allison knew he was seeing someone. She had told herself that. But knowing and standing in his parents' living room while another woman wore his ring were different things. Paige was polite, pretty, calm. Worse than angry. The whole room shifted around her. Eric's mother got too bright. His sister watched Allison's face. Eric started making jokes that landed wrong. At dinner, he told a story about Allison crying during old Christmas movies. Every year, he said, laughing, she was so dramatic. Allison laughed too because she did not know what else to do. Then Paige looked at her and asked, "So how does your husband feel about you being here?" That question cut through the table. Allison said, "Adam is with his family." Eric's sister frowned. "Oh," she said, "I thought he was working." Allison froze. Small lies are like loose threads. Pull one, and the whole sweater starts coming apart. Paige set down her glass. "Wait," she said. "How long have you two been talking?" Eric tried to laugh. Allison said, "It wasn't like that." Paige did not look at Allison. She looked at Eric. "How long?" Eric said, "A couple weeks." Allison said, "October." The table went silent. Eric's mother whispered his name like a warning. Paige leaned back in her chair. "So you've been secretly talking to your engaged ex for 2 months," she said to Eric, "and invited his married ex-fiancée to Christmas?" No one corrected her. That was when Allison finally understood. She had not been invited back as family. She had been invited as proof, a test, a curiosity. A way for Eric's mother to show everyone they were mature now. Maybe even a way for Eric to feel powerful, knowing Allison would still come when called. She stepped outside and called me. I did not answer. She texted, "Can you call me? This is weird." Then, "I think I made a mistake." Then, "Adam, please." I was at my rental, sitting on the floor because the couch had not arrived yet, eating Chinese takeout with a plastic fork. I saw every message. I answered none of them. Christmas morning, Allison left Eric's parents' house early. Before she left, she heard Eric and Paige arguing in the kitchen. Paige said, "You wanted her here." Eric said, "I didn't think she'd actually come without him." That sentence did what I never could. It made Allison see herself. Not as wanted. Not as special. Available. On the drive home, she started texting everyone. Me. Her mother. Her father. To me, she wrote, "I'm coming home. Please be there." To Marcy. "Please don't make this bigger than it is." To Tom. Adam misunderstood. That was when the family group chat lit up. Marcy wrote, "Allison, We know Adam did not misunderstand. He told us calmly and factually, "Don't insult everyone by pretending otherwise." Tom wrote, "We love you, but we are ashamed of how you handled this. No yelling, no insults, just disappointment." I think that hurt her more. She pulled into our driveway after noon. The first thing she noticed was that my boots were gone. She went inside calling my name. The house was clean, quiet, too normal. My mug was gone from the dish rack. My jacket was gone from the hook. The framed photo with her parents was missing from the hallway table. Then she ran upstairs. She opened the closet. My side was empty. Not messy. Empty. Her green overnight bag was still in her hand when she saw the note on the dresser. She called me 6 times. On the 7th, I answered. She was crying so hard I could barely understand her. "Adam," she said, "can we talk?" I looked around my rental. 1 lamp, 3 boxes. Snow against the window. "Through the attorney," I said. She sucked in a breath. "You're really ending our marriage over one Christmas?" I closed my eyes. "No," I said. "I'm ending it because you thought I was the kind of man who would wait at home while you auditioned for your old life." She had no answer. For once, Allison had nothing prepared. No softer version. No half-truth. No way to make me the problem. I hung up. The weeks after that were not dramatic. That surprised people. Allison's supply subscriptions started bouncing because my card was no longer there to catch them. Her side projects suddenly became real expenses. Her parents did not cut her off, but they did not blame me either. Eric's engagement had problems after Christmas. I heard that from someone who heard it from someone else. I did not ask. By New Year's Eve, I was back at the station. Tony brought takeout. We ate noodles out of cartons while snow packed against the ambulance bay doors. At 11:46, Marcy texted me. "I'm sorry we didn't see how much you were carrying." I read it twice. Then, I set my phone down. Outside, the ambulance lights reflected against the snow, red and white and quiet. I used to think loyalty meant standing still long enough for someone to come back to their senses. I thought if I stayed calm, stayed useful, stayed kind, the person I loved would understand what that kind of love was worth. But that Christmas taught me something colder and cleaner. Sometimes the person you love does not need more proof that you will stay. Sometimes they need to feel the silence you leave behind when you finally stop explaining your worth. And for the first time in years, I was not waiting to be chosen. I had chosen myself. If this story hit you, let me know in the comments whether Adam handled it right or if Allison deserved one final conversation. And if you want more stories where quiet people finally stop being taken for granted, like and subscribe.